Bobby trudged across the wasteland, squinting into the blazing sun, his face as parched as a stale cracker left out in the desert for a week. What used to be a thriving city was now a graveyard of rubble, with remnants of skyscrapers scattered around like the world's worst Lego accident. Sweat trickled down his brow, mixing with the dirt and dust that clung to his skin like he'd rolled in powdered sugar, if powdered sugar came straight from hell. "Just another glorious day in the apocalypse," Bobby muttered, kicking a rusty hunk of metal that clanged uselessly. His canteen hung at his side, about as helpful as a soggy sandwich in a food fight. He had been wandering this forsaken stretch for hours, searching for something, anything, that could help his group of survivors back at the bunker. But the only thing out here was a whole lot of nothing. He was just about to let loose a string of creative curses when, out of nowhere, the sky erupted in a blinding flash of light. Bobby flinched, stumbling backward like he'd been hit with the world's brightest selfie flash. When the spots in his vision cleared, he stared, mouth hanging open like a fish on land. Hovering in the sky was a ship, sleek and shiny, like a chrome toaster on steroids. It descended, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris as it landed. A hatch hissed open, and out stepped. Well, Bobby wasn't sure what he was expecting. Maybe some bug-eyed alien with a ray gun, but instead, a stunning blue-skinned woman strutted out, as graceful as a cat on a fence. She was tall, with eyes that shimmered like someone had dropped a few stars in them. She smiled, a smile so perfect, Bobby was half convinced she'd just come from a toothpaste commercial. "We come in peace," she said in a voice so smooth it could have sold ice cream to a penguin. Bobby gulped, trying to pull his brain together like it was a tangled set of Christmas lights. Who are you?" "I'm Zarla," she said, stepping closer. "And you're Bobby." Bobby blinked, surprised. Yeah. "How'd you know?" "Let's just say we've been watching," Zarla replied with a wink. Bobby wasn't sure if he should feel flattered or deeply concerned. "We've traveled across the stars with an offer. A chance to help your people survive." Bobby's skepticism kicked in. "Yeah. What's the catch?" "No one's just giving out free help these days. I tried to trade for a bottle of water last week, and the guy wanted my left shoe." Zarla chuckled. "Oh, Bobby. Always with the suspicion. Can't we just want to help?" He crossed his arms, trying to look tough while simultaneously fighting the urge to wipe the dirt off his face with his sleeve. "You've been watching us? Well, if you've seen us lately, you'd know we're not exactly winning Species of the Year right now. So, what's in it for you?" Zarla's smile didn't falter, but there was something knowing behind those starry eyes. "We believe our two species can complement each other. Make something greater. Something better. A new future for both our peoples." Bobby narrowed his eyes. "You mean, a science project? You're gonna turn us into some alien-human smoothie, aren't you?" "Not quite," Zarla purred, stepping even closer, her voice dripping with charm. "Think of it as evolution." Back at the bunker, the survivors weren't too thrilled when Bobby dragged Zarla in for a meet and greet. The place reeked of unwashed humans and desperation, and Zarla, with her sparkly blue skin, looked like an exotic butterfly in a room full of moths. "So you're gonna, wave a magic wand and fix all this?" an old-timer named Fred grumbled, gesturing vaguely at the general mess. Zarla gave him a smile that could melt glaciers. "Not quite. But we can help you evolve. Become stronger, more resilient. A version of humanity that can survive this new world. We'll combine the best of your traits and ours." Fred raised an eyebrow. "So, aliens are gonna do some weird science to us? Turn us into blue superheroes?" "Only if you want," Zarla replied, her smile now just the tiniest bit too perfect. "It's an offer, not a mandate." The bunker exploded in arguments, some folks shouting that Zarla's offer was the best thing since canned beans, while others accused her of trying to turn them into alien minions. Bobby stood at the center of it all, rubbing his temples like he had the mother of all headaches. "Enough!" Bobby roared, finally cutting through the noise. "Look, if you're all so scared, I'll do it. I'll be the guinea pig." The room went silent. Fred raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this, Bobby?" "Why not?" Bobby shrugged, trying not to think too hard about the implications. "I'm already half dead most days anyway. Might as well see if this evolution thing actually works." Outside the bunker, Zarla was waiting, looking like she had all the time in the world. "So, Bobby," she said with that infuriatingly calm smile, "have you decided?" Bobby nodded, his mouth dry. "Yeah, I'll do it. Just me. For now." "Brave," she murmured, her smile widening. "Very brave. Let's begin." As Zarla led Bobby toward her ship, he couldn't help but think about all the things that could go wrong. But as he glanced back at the tired, hungry faces in the bunker, he figured they didn't have much left to lose. "Well," he muttered to himself, "at least if I turn into a glowing alien freak, I'll have some great stories to tell." Zarla shot him a look, her silver eyes sparkling with amusement. "I think you'll find this journey transformative." Bobby rolled his eyes. Yeah. Just don't give me antennae. I don't want to be a walking Wi-Fi hotspot." With that, they stepped into the ship, and Bobby braced himself for whatever cosmic weirdness was about to come next. As Bobby stepped into the ship, he immediately felt like he'd walked into the lobby of a high-end spa, not an alien spacecraft. The walls gleamed with a soft, pulsating light, and the air was filled with a scent that was both calming and oddly familiar, like lavender and barbecue sauce. Zarla motioned for him to follow her down a hallway that shimmered as they moved, as if the ship was alive and mildly amused by its passengers. Bobby did his best not to gape at everything, but he still let out a low whistle. "Not exactly the flying saucer I imagined," he muttered. Zarla smiled over her shoulder. "We aim to surprise. Keeps things interesting." "Interesting," Bobby repeated, trying to sound casual even though his nerves were doing the cha-cha inside his gut. "That's one word for it. How long is this gonna take? You're not gonna, stick me in a giant blender, right?" Zarla laughed, a sound that echoed through the corridor like wind chimes in a breeze. "No blenders. We're more sophisticated than that. It'll be more like a nap. With benefits." "Nap with benefits," Bobby repeated, scratching his head. Not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. They arrived at a room with walls so white they practically glowed. In the center was a sleek pod, looking like someone had crossbred a tanning bed with a futuristic cocoon. "Just lie down," Zarla said, gesturing toward the pod. "The process is painless. You'll wake up feeling refreshed." Bobby hesitated, glancing at the pod with suspicion. "This isn't one of those sci-fi things where I wake up and it's been 100 years, and you've taken over the planet, right?" Zarla raised an eyebrow, amused. "We're offering to help, not auditioning for a villain role." With a deep breath, Bobby climbed into the pod. As he settled in, the lid slid down over him with a soft hiss. Immediately, a warm, tingling sensation spread across his body, like he was lying in a bath filled with fizzy soda. For a moment, he felt weightless, his thoughts drifting in a pleasant haze. Then the haze deepened, and Bobby felt himself slipping away into a deep, dreamless sleep. Hours, or maybe minutes, later, Bobby stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and he blinked at the pod's ceiling. Everything felt different. He sat up slowly, half expecting to find himself covered in blue fur or sprouting wings. "Welcome back," Zarla's voice greeted him from the side. She was leaning against the wall, watching him with a curious smile. "How do you feel?" Bobby wiggled his fingers and toes, then stood up cautiously. He flexed his arms, stretched his legs. He felt stronger, more alive. There was a crackling energy inside him, like he could punch through a wall or at least open a particularly stubborn jar of pickles. "I feel great," he admitted, a bit shocked. "Like, really great. What did you do to me?" Zarla smiled and handed him a small mirror. "See for yourself." Bobby hesitated, then took the mirror. The face that stared back at him wasn't exactly unfamiliar, but it was definitely improved. His skin was clearer, his hair fuller, and his eyes were brighter, sharper. They practically glowed with an inner light. "Whoa," he whispered, touching his face. "Is this me?" "Enhanced," Zarla explained. "Stronger, faster, more resilient. Your body will adapt to the harsh conditions of this world. You'll be able to survive where others struggle. You're still you, Bobby, just better." Bobby couldn't help but grin. "Well, I gotta admit, I was expecting to wake up with gills or something. This is kind of amazing." He paused, then added with a smirk, "You didn't give me superpowers, did you?" Please tell me I can fly. Zarla laughed. Not quite. But you'll find you're capable of much more than you were before. Let's just say opening pickle jars will no longer be a challenge. Bobby hopped off the pod, testing his new body. He felt light on his feet, like he could run a marathon without breaking a sweat, or, at the very least, outrun Fred if he ever started a foot race back at the bunker. So, what now? Bobby asked, rolling his shoulders. Do I go back to the bunker and impress everyone with my newfound ability to lift things? Zarla's expression grew more serious. Now, you offer the others the same choice. But remember, Bobby, not everyone will want this. Change is difficult for some. Bobby nodded, though he couldn't imagine why anyone would say no to feeling like a superhero. Yeah, I get it. But if this can help us survive, it's worth a shot. Zarla stepped closer, her silver eyes locking onto his. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's more to our partnership than just strength and resilience. We want to build something new, together. Bobby swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. This wasn't just about getting stronger. There was something bigger at play here, something he wasn't sure he was ready for. But before he could overthink it, Zarla smiled again, that familiar twinkle of amusement returning to her eyes. But first, let's see if you can handle the new you. How about a race back to the bunker? Bobby raised an eyebrow, a grin spreading across his face. Oh, you're on, Blue Lady. But don't be surprised when I leave you in the dust. With a laugh, Zarla turned and sprinted out of the ship, her movements as fluid as ever. Bobby took a deep breath, then dashed after her, his feet barely touching the ground. As the wind whipped through his hair, he couldn't help but laugh. Maybe the apocalypse wasn't so bad after all. Bobby bolted after Zarla, his new legs carrying him faster than he'd ever run in his life. The dry, cracked earth zoomed by beneath his feet as if the laws of gravity had decided to take the day off. The wind whistled in his ears, and for a moment, he felt like he was flying. Ahead of him, Zarla glided effortlessly over the desolate landscape, barely leaving a footprint in the dust. Her alien grace made it seem like she wasn't even trying, which, to be fair, only fueled Bobby's determination to catch up. All right, I get it. Bobby shouted between breaths. You're fast. No need to rub it in. Zarla laughed, the sound somehow carrying back to him despite the rush of wind in his ears. I'm not even at full speed, Bobby. You've got a long way to go if you want to catch up with me. Great, just what I need, an alien with a competitive streak, he muttered under his breath. As they raced toward the bunker, Bobby could see the entrance in the distance, camouflaged beneath layers of debris and old steel beams. He could already imagine Fred's face when he showed up looking like a brand-new action figure. But before that happened, there was something he had to figure out. How on Earth, or whatever planet Zarla was from, he was supposed to explain this whole situation to the others. Would they believe him? Probably not. Heck, he barely believed what was happening. And that was before he had to bring up the whole genetic manipulation part. Most of the people back at the bunker couldn't even agree on which side of canned soup to open, much less how to handle an offer to become part alien. Zarla slowed down as they reached the bunker, gracefully coming to a stop while Bobby did his best not to skid and faceplant into the dirt. He managed to stay on his feet, barely, though he probably looked like a malfunctioning wind-up toy. So, how'd I do? Bobby asked, panting slightly. Zarla gave him an approving nod. Impressive. For a human. Gee, thanks. I'll put that on my resume. He bent over, catching his breath. I'm guessing you didn't break a sweat? She tilted her head, clearly amused. Sweat? No. But I can say I enjoyed watching you try to keep up. Bobby grinned despite himself. Glad I could entertain. All right, now comes the fun part, convincing everyone else this wasn't some weird fever dream. As they approached the entrance to the bunker, Bobby felt a familiar twinge of anxiety creep in. He wasn't exactly the bunker's most trusted leader. That title went to Fred, who had somehow managed to stay calm and sensible while the world burned down around them. Fred was a big-picture guy, always weighing options and keeping everyone level-headed. Meanwhile, Bobby was more of a punch-first, think-later kind of guy. So, yeah, this conversation was going to be a blast. Ready? Zarla asked, watching him closely. Ready as I'll ever be, Bobby muttered, rubbing his hands together. Let's just hope no one freaks out when they see me walking in with you. And, glowing slightly. Zarla raised an eyebrow. You're not glowing. Bobby grinned sheepishly. Feels like I am. He knocked on the door in the special sequence only the bunker members knew. After a moment, it creaked open to reveal Fred standing there, his stern face crinkling into a frown the moment he saw Bobby, and then Zarla behind him. What the Bobby, what's going on? Fred's eyes darted between them, suspicion etched deep into his features. He had a big wrench in his hand, which wasn't particularly comforting. Well, Fred, buddy, I've got a bit of a story for you, Bobby started, holding up his hands as if trying to calm a particularly jittery horse. But first, let me introduce you to Zarla. She's from outer space. And no, I haven't lost my mind. Fred blinked. His grip on the wrench tightened. Outer space? Really? Bobby nodded vigorously. Yup. Big ship, advanced technology, all that jazz. She's here to offer us something pretty big. Fred's frown deepened. And that something is... Before Bobby could answer, Zarla stepped forward, her presence as commanding as ever. We've come to offer your people a chance to survive and thrive in this world. Our technology can enhance your bodies, making you stronger, more adaptable. We can help you rebuild. Fred's eyes narrowed, his wrench lowering just slightly. Enhance? Adaptable? That sounds dangerous. Bobby jumped in, waving his arms around in what he hoped was a reassuring gesture. No, it's totally fine. Look at me. I went through it, and I feel amazing. I can probably lift that rusty old car outside without breaking a sweat. He paused. I haven't tried yet, but I'm pretty sure I can. Fred studied Bobby with a critical eye. You do look different. He sniffed the air. And why do you smell like lavender and barbecue sauce? Bobby opened his mouth, then closed it again, glancing at Zarla. I don't know. Maybe it's a side effect. Fred's frown softened, but only a little. Okay, let's say for a moment I believe you. What's the catch? What do they get out of this? No one offers something for nothing, especially not aliens. Zarla, to her credit, remained calm under Fred's scrutiny. We're looking for partners, not subjects. Our species is dying out. By sharing our genetic technology, we can create something new, something better. A blend of our strengths and yours. Together, we can ensure both our species survive. Fred crossed his arms, still not entirely convinced. And if we say no, then we leave, Zarla said simply. And you continue as you are, trying to survive in a world that grows more hostile by the day. The choice is yours. There was a long pause. Bobby watched as Fred processed everything, his eyes flicking between him and Zarla. Finally, Fred let out a long sigh and lowered the wrench entirely. You're asking a lot, Bobby, Fred said quietly. But I'll give you this, if you're willing to go through this thing first, maybe it's worth hearing them out. Bobby clapped his hands together, relieved. See, that's all I'm asking. Just hear them out. You don't have to decide right away. Fred nodded, glancing back at Zarla.
All right, come inside.
We'll talk. But I'm warning you, if this turns out to be some kind of trick, I won't hesitate to use this wrench. Zarla smiled serenely. Understood. I look forward to our conversation. As they stepped into the bunker, Bobby couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and excitement. They were on the brink of something big, something that could change everything. Now, all they had to do was convince the rest of the survivors that this wasn't some cosmic scam. Easier said than done. As Bobby, Zarla, and Fred descended into the bunker, the air thickened with tension. The narrow passageway seemed even tighter than usual, with the weight of the impending conversation pressing in on all sides. Fred led the way, grumbling under his breath and casting suspicious glances at Zarla. Bobby trailed behind, trying to ignore the stares of the other survivors as they moved deeper into the underground shelter. Word had clearly spread fast, because when they reached the main chamber, nearly everyone was already gathered, eyes wide with a mix of awe and skepticism. Makeshift lanterns flickered dimly, casting long shadows on the walls, and the smell of stale air mixed with curiosity filled the room. At least, Bobby thought, no one was holding a pitchfork or a wrench yet. All right, everyone, Fred barked, clapping his hands to get the crowd's attention. You all know why we're here. Bobby's brought a visitor, and she's got something to say. The group shifted uneasily. Sarah, the older woman who was always quick to voice her concerns, crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes. This better be good, Bobby. We're not exactly in the mood for another weird Bobby adventure. Bobby forced a grin. Trust me, this isn't like the time I tried to make indoor plumbing out of a shopping cart. This is the real deal. Zarla stepped forward, all grace and poise. Even in the dim light, her alien beauty was striking. Several of the survivors whispered to each other, clearly captivated and concerned in equal measure. I am Zarla, she began, her voice echoing softly through the chamber. I come from a race known as the Zrithians. My people have traveled across the stars to offer you a chance at something extraordinary, a way to survive, to thrive, in a world that's becoming increasingly hostile. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. Bobby could feel the tension in the room rising, like everyone was collectively holding their breath. Sarah snorted. And what exactly are you offering, alien lady? We've heard promises before. How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Zarla smiled, her expression calm and patient. It's not a trick, I assure you. What we offer is a partnership, a blending of our strengths with yours, through the integration of our genetic technology. With our help, you will gain abilities, strength, resilience, and adaptability that will allow you to thrive in this environment. Bobby gave a thumbs up from the back. She's telling the truth. Look at me. I've already gone through it, and I feel like a freaking superhero. No more achy knees, no more worrying about starving to death or being crushed by a mutant rodent. There was a murmur of disbelief from the crowd. Some people, like Sarah, remained skeptical, while others couldn't help but eye Bobby with curiosity. His newfound energy was palpable. Fred stepped forward, his face unreadable. But what's the price? What do you get out of this partnership? Zarla's expression grew serious. We seek survival, just as you do. Our race is dwindling. By merging our strengths with yours, we ensure the survival of both our species. This is a mutual agreement, not a conquest. Sarah scoffed. So you want to turn us into lab rats for some science experiment? Bobby jumped in. It's not like that. It's more like a cool upgrade, like when you finally find a working toaster after years of eating cold beans. You're still you, but better. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Sarah wasn't convinced. And what about our humanity, Bobby? What about the things that make us who we are? You willing to trade that away for a few tricks? Bobby paused, scratching the back of his head. I don't feel any less human. If anything, I feel more alive. Stronger. I mean, come on, Sarah, you've seen what we're up against out there. We need all the help we can get. And if that means a little bit of alien DNA, well, maybe that's not such a bad deal. Fred watched the exchange, his brow furrowed in deep thought. He turned to Zarla. You said it's a choice, right? We're not being forced into anything. Zarla nodded. That's correct. Each of you will have the opportunity to choose. No one will be forced into the integration. If you decline, we will leave, and you may continue as you are. Fred looked around the room, taking in the gaunt, tired faces of the survivors. He sighed. We've been fighting for so long, just trying to scrape by. I know a lot of you don't want to lose what's left of our humanity. But look at us. We're barely holding on. Maybe it's time to consider something different. A young man in the back, Jason, raised his hand. So, what exactly would this integration feel like? Are we talking needles, surgery, weird glowing lights? Zarla smiled. It's a painless process. There are no needles or invasive procedures. It's more like unlocking potential that's already within you. The changes are gradual, but noticeable. Bobby, ever the volunteer, slapped his chest. I'm living proof, folks. Look at me, no weird side effects, no growing a second head. Just a better, more capable Bobby. And trust me, the world could use a better Bobby. There were a few nervous laughs, but the room was still filled with uncertainty. Bobby could see that some of the survivors were on the verge of being convinced, while others were still struggling with the enormity of the decision. Sarah stepped forward again, her face a mask of grim resolve. "I don't trust it. I don't trust you," she said, pointing at Zarla. "But if there's even a chance this could help us survive, then I'll go through it. But I swear, if this is some kind of trick, I'll make sure you regret it." Zarla bowed her head respectfully. "I understand your caution. But I assure you, Sarah, our intentions are honest." Fred clapped his hands again. "All right. Anyone else? You don't have to decide right now, but if you're willing to take the plunge, speak up. Otherwise, we'll take some time to think it over." One by one, a few hands slowly rose. Jason raised his hand nervously, followed by a couple of others. Bobby felt a surge of pride. Maybe this could actually work. Fred gave a reluctant nod. "Okay, we'll give it a shot. But we'll need time to think. And we'll need more answers before we make any final decisions." Zarla smiled, her silver eyes gleaming with a quiet warmth. "Take all the time you need. We will wait." As the crowd began to disperse, some still deep in conversation, Bobby caught up with Fred. "You really think this could work?" he asked, a hint of doubt creeping into his voice for the first time.
Fred sighed.
"I don't know, Bobby. But we're running out of options. And if we don't at least try, we might not have a future left to worry about." Bobby nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. One thing was clear: the fate of their little bunker, and perhaps the entire human race, was teetering on the edge of something big. And Bobby couldn't help but wonder what his old high school wrestling coach would think if he saw him now.